This is Ed Stetzer Live, and it is good to be alive and back with you here on another week. And yes, we're live here this week on Ed Stetzer Live. My name is Ed Stetzer. I'm the Dean of the Talbot School of Theology at Biola University, and excited to be your radio host this and every Saturday. Last week, talked a little bit about, because I hadn't been on the program for a few weeks. People were like, what's going on? Unless you follow me on social media, which I wouldn't assume that you necessarily do. You wouldn't know that I have had a pretty major health issue. So it was very rare, actually. But I got a rare fistula on my spine, which caused me to have emergency surgery, hospital for 10 days. I think I'm coming up on almost 3 weeks after surgery, and I'm walking some, but like this morning was very, very difficult. When I walk 15 minutes, it feels like I hiked 5 miles. So it's just a question of relearning to walk and dealing with some other things. So if we see each other you'll notice I use a walker probably for a few months, and then a cane probably for a year, and then praying and hoping to see all those things be resolved. I want to dance in my daughter's wedding, which is 11 months from now. So that's the big goal that I have. Dance without a cane, but if I have to dance with a cane, some of you may be old enough to remember Fred Astaire. I mean, I could pull that off, I guess. We'll see. But that's been for those people often asking on the call, so this is just a little bit of an update. That's not going to be the focus of our show today. But there's one question that's going to sort of relate to how do we address suffering and those things. All right, so let me introduce our guest and then invite you to call into our conversation as well. Our guest is Justin Poythress. He is a pastor and a writer. His goal is to restore rest and wonder to the worn out. He grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia, got his MDiv and DMin at Westminster Theological Seminary, which is, those of you who don't know, the field of the world of theological education is kind of a giant in our world. He has lived and worked in Nashville, Indianapolis, Fort Myers, and Boise with his wife, Liz, and their 2 daughters. Actually, I said Boise like a non-Boise, Boise. He lives in Boise, and I learned that. Justin, you're a little surprised that I know the difference, because we're launching
I'm impressed.
No, exactly, because I go there and I speak. We're launching a seminary program there in Boise, and the guy comes up to me afterwards and says, listen, if you're going to be launching a seminary program in Boise, you need to learn to say Boise, not Boise. And so I'm like, I'm a missiologist. Like, I should be culturally aware. Anyway, Justin, we're glad. Do you live in Boise now? Is that where you are now?
I do. Yes. Yeah. Suburbs of Boise.
Yeah, it's a great city. And just, God, can I tell you though, I don't think people have any idea how bad the traffic is there. And it's all because of people leaving California. So I just want to say, I'm sorry for all the Californians who are coming your direction. So, but welcome to the program.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Just been really blessed by your ministry, Ed. So thank you.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Appreciate you. Okay, so we're talking about your new book, and you're talking about, here's the title. It's Who Am I and What Am I Doing with My Life? Finding Stability and Purpose in Jesus. It's one of those long titles with an equally long subtitle. It's not like Comeback Churches or something. But so I'm going to try to say it again, so make sure people get it. And it's available. You can purchase it right now. Who am I and what am I doing with my life? Now, again, the audience, I guess when we kind of write something like this, the audience is always everybody, because everybody should buy the book. But young adults are kind of a theme that keeps coming up, et cetera, et cetera. So tell me a little about who you wrote this for.
That's a learning process for me, because when you go into write, it's a big no-no, is you're never supposed to say everyone. And so I learned and got narrowed through the Good Book Company. Did a great job. And they're like, I think this would really land well with teens, young adults, that sort of spectrum, just trying to figure out what the title says, who they are, what am I doing with my life, a lot of identity pressures. But the reality is, you're dealing with that at any stage of life.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the questions. I'm like, right now I'm having to rethink. Like, am I?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much of my ability to walk I'm going to get back. So am I still, am I a speaker now? Am I still a speaker? Am I going to become an author more? So I think those things are true at every stage. But I'm the father of 3 daughters. You have 2 daughters. There's still time. Girls are the greatest. And but my 3 daughters are all young adults. They're all in their 20s. I'm actually going to give this book to one of them in particular. Not from the 5 free copies that we're going to give away today, but I'm going to give this book to one of them in particular. I think this is the kind of book that I think young adults would find super helpful to go to. I recognize too that it can be more broad than that as well. So let's kind of lean in a little bit on the book and get a feel for kind of what's going on, what we can learn. The what were there personal experiences that were helped to shape you in writing this for others?
Yeah, I think the sort of, I'll say, a triggering experience. I'd started my doctoral work at Westminster, and I did a lot of youth ministry, decade plus, and doing that. And I was working with some teens, and I remember having a conversation with two teenage girls, both of them having sexual or gender identity struggles. And I remember just thinking, oh, well, this is very black and white. They need to hear the gospel. They need to hear about who Jesus is and come to faith. And I sat down with some other volunteer helpers and just kind of talked them through the gospel. And they looked at me like I'm trying to sell them on eating chocolate. It's like, yeah, of course we believe that. And I walked away from that just realizing I am woefully unprepared to deal with, like, what are the actual questions. So it got me into thinking, okay, well, what are the questions behind this? What are the identity struggles that lead to, yeah, I think that this is really how I express myself. This is being true to myself, whatever it is. And as I did that, it was an awakening for me because I realized, okay, I'm not particularly aligned towards, okay, I'm going to identify as a gay guy or transgender or something. But the questions underneath those, the formative identity questions, I'm in this every day of my life, or at least every week. I'm just thinking through these formative questions, like, how do I think about myself? Who am I? What matters? What can I take hold of? And is, rooting points for me. And so I think that sort of drove this, to think through what are the questions behind the questions, so to speak, of how I think about identity.
Yeah, and I do think that I think a lot of our audience, depending on, I'm a Gen Xer, and I'm guessing you're probably a generation younger than me. But I think a lot of people, maybe who are old my age or so, they don't realize, unless you work with young adults, just how significant the identity struggle is with young adults. And then if they do realize it's immediately, it is immediately maybe gender identity, because that's such a thing that has become a
Hmm.
conversation in many ways. We at Mariners Church, where I serve as teaching pastor, we actually teach through what the Bible says about these things. And I will tell you that that's some of the biggest conversations, but also we have more young adults who come to that service to kind of talk through some of these
Hmm.
things than normal. So people want to know. So you kind of begin the book with the claim that our culture is experiencing an identity crisis. So I guess the question is, because again, if I'm a Gen Xer, I'm like, well, we didn't think that way. We didn't have an identity crisis. But so what changed over the last generation that makes the question, who am I, feel so much more urgent today?
Yeah, that's a great question. Short answer is I don't know. I don't know entirely, except I think one of the explanations for it, Ed, is that the optionality.
Yeah.
Options have just exploded, and you always got to talk about the internet in these conversations. I think one of the really fascinating things today, you talk to kids in like second, third grade, right? And I think this is a good litmus test. Like, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I remember, so I'm millennial. I'm 39 now, and I remember the standard stuff was always, oh, singer, athlete, whatever, and these impossible dreams, that you might say, okay, I want to be this. But now a lot of times I want to be an influencer. I want to be a YouTuber. I want to be a professional gamer. And it doesn't sound that much different, but the reality is those types of, let's say, quote unquote, careers, you're less likely to, let's say, grow out of them. They're more
Mm,
attainable.
mm,
They actually are more attainable than being a professional athlete or a rock star. And so that's just for instance, of just the optionalities of life have just really, really expanded. And that's a good thing. I don't think you need to just decry that and say, oh, that's just this, our culture has gone, haywire. But it creates this sort of pressure, constant identity pressure, because you realize in the back of your mind how many things you could have chosen or still could choose. We're very affluent, transitory, uh, culture now, and so the options are just so many that that creates this feeling of missing out or fear.
Yeah, my guess is that a lot of our listening audience is saying, and I got kids that are struggling through their identity, and this might be a helpful resource for you. Again, the book is Who Am I and What Am I Doing with My Life? Finding Stability and Purpose in Jesus. So let's open up the phone lines so those like to call in. And again, we have 5 copies of the book to give away. And that's not like you call up and say, am I calling number 7? Do I get a book? No, it's more like, really insightful questions or comments, which I'm consistently impressed with the questions and comments from our Ed Stetzer Live audience. So our phone number is 877 548 3675. Let me remind you, too, that you can find the link to the book. It's always easy to find at edstetzerlive.com. Easy to remember. The links be there to Justin's bio, also the book. Again, our phone number, 877 548 3675. So again, I want to continue our conversation in just a second, but I want us to give the opportunity for folks to give us a call in. And the book, again, is Who Am I and What Am I Doing with My Life? Finding Stability and Purpose in Jesus. Justin Poythress is our guest. And again, he's a pastor and a writer. His goal is to help restore rest and wonder to the worn out. And he's going to give us some insights in conversation with you if you'll give us a call at 877 548 3675. One more time, talking about who am I and what am I doing with my life? 877 548 3675. Hey, we're back. Ed Stetzer Live. I'm your host. Guest is Justin Poythress, talking about his new book, Who Am I? What Am I Doing with My Life? Finding Stability and Purpose in Jesus. You kind of interact with the idea, Justin, of expressive individualism, which it's such a common phrase now, and to be clear, I like it. For listeners who never heard the phrase, what is it? How has it shaped the way Christians think about identity without even realizing it?
Yeah, I think that maybe to kind of put some underlining on it, if you were to ask, now they wouldn't use this term, but if you were to ask most, let's say, young adults or Gen Z and younger, like what is the most important, like what do you want more than anything in life? It's this. It's that I want to um, self actualize. They're not going to use that term probably, but I want to be everything that I can be. And so that's expressive individualism. It's this idea that this is the one overarching, I would say, even more so than money or fame or sex, even though those things have lasting power, they get rolled into this higher goal, actually a higher goal of I want to express what's inside of me. There's something inside of me, who I am, whatever that is, and I express this individual self fully, then I reach my sort of peak humanity, joy, fulfillment, meaning, all of that stuff.
Yeah, finding who I am and then living into who I am. I mean, that's literally, I'm the dean of the seminary, but I'm the dean of the undergrad, and this is what you hear all the time from young adults. And one of the things I should remind people the phone number before I mention this. I'm going to ask one more question, then we're going to go to the lines. 877 548 3675. I'm guessing probably some of you want to talk about your kids and kind of how they walk through these things. 877 548 3675. Okay. Got to find who I am. Like I got to self actualize in that expressive
Mm.
individualism. But also one of the central themes of your book is that we receive rather than we create. We receive our identity. And that's a pretty countercultural claim when I got to find myself.
Mm.
So why do you think the biblical vision, if I'm not stating it correctly, you can restate it, but why do you think the biblical vision is actually more freeing than the modern one?
Yeah, I think one of the terms it's made up, but but I think it's useful. It's this idea of givenness, and receiving goes with that. Okay, a givenness implies there's a giver, first of all. I think that's an enormous, and so that means you can have a personal relationship with this giver. That is amazing. There's not just you're just like a person. You've got to build yourself from the ground up. but it's incredibly liberating, this idea of like you are created, you are loved, you are crafted by a personal God who knows you, who's created you, who shaped you to be a very particular sort of person. And the reality is, what can be unsettling if you really start thinking about this is that no matter how much you try and think that you are creating yourself, we are all receiving. You receive from your parents, your friends, your culture. It's just a question of you can't, and no one, you would go insane if you're in isolation. You wouldn't have an identity. We develop identity from other sources that are given to us. And so it's just a myth, this idea that you are just going to create who you are. And the advantage of Christianity is like you've got a personal God who loves you and died for you and who's made you. That's a good starting place.
Okay, let's go to some calls. Let me remind everyone our phone number is 877-548-3675. That's 877-548-3675. We're going to go to Florida, and I'm hoping, Hannah Laura, that's how you pronounce your name. But Hannah Laura, you are live on your with your question, your comment. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Well pronounced. Yes, I called before about discipling one of my grandsons, and he's kind of strayed a little bit because he's overwhelmed with being a teenager. He has a twin, and they just graduated from high school. They don't know what they want to do with their lives. They've grown up in a split home, and they were always doing everything together, and they just spreading out, and they're one is doing something and the other one wants to do something else, but they don't really know what they want to do. And then I have a granddaughter who's 19, and she's the same way. But I'm really more concerned about these two boys because they've always been clinging to each other, done everything with each other, and now they're going in opposite directions and still don't know what they want to do, and it's just really frustrating. And the one that I had been discipling is not he's overwhelmed just being a teenager, and I think he's in love, and all that stuff. So
we know how that works, Hannah Laura, for sure. Okay, why don't we have Justin sort of weigh in? I mean, he's been in student ministry, and thank you for your call. Hold on, too. We're going to give you a copy of Who Am I and What Am I Doing in My Life? Finding Stability and Purpose in Jesus. And just so you're aware, Justin. So, like I said, Hannah Laura's been working, discipling one of her grandson. She just indicated maybe he's in love, he's got the teenager confusion, all that sort of there. I mean, this is kind of right up the alley of what you wrote. So what advice would you give to Hannah Laura? We're going to send her a copy of your book, but what advice would you give?
Yeah, thanks for calling. That's a good question, Hannah Laura, and awesome. I think amazing that you're in his life and have some kind of access. I think that's one of the biggest things that I'll try to underscore to parents is just like being available to have those conversations and that you are a trusted person that this person can talk to, that those lines of trust, and not just a heavy hand, but those lines of trust are huge. And so being willing and open to hear what he has to say, and that's okay for him to express what it is. I think another angle I would say is that it's very, very normal, and I think probably something he doesn't fully grasp is how much that type of relationship with his twin is going to be such a formative thing. And like I would be shocked if it's not incredibly hard, as almost inevitably you're going to get to a point in life where your lives, you can't just keep going to the same school, classes, activities, sports, whatever. You are going to start going in different directions with families, and that's a pretty seismic identity shift. And so he's grasping for, okay, well, what's a fixed point? What's a stabilizing point as like this probably primary relationship with his twin, almost more so than perhaps any other. And that's fine. That's good. As that starts to change, well, what can he hold on to? What is true? What's about him? I think he having a personal, specific, individual relationship with Jesus and knowing that Jesus sees him for who he is, not as a part of his brother, even though that's a part of his story. But that's a point. I think of that relationship and who Jesus is remains the same, and can be a kind of stable ground.
Good word. Good word. Hey, Laura, thanks for your call. Hold on the line, too, and our producer will get in line and give you a copy of the book. Let's go to Raj in Oklahoma. Raj, you're live on the air. Go right ahead with your question or comment.
Yeah, my question is, how do we reconcile two aspects of identity? One aspect is our occupation, what we do. I'm a teacher. Teachers are supposed to do this, not supposed to do this. I'm a parent. A parent's supposed to do this and not supposed to do this. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is past hurts. Something bad happened to me, and now I identify as a victim. How do we kind of reconcile those two aspects?
Huh. I think that's interesting, Raj. I'm trying to figure like it's almost like, Justin, we should take these one at a time. Or maybe you want to bring it together. But when I think about like identity related to work, I mean, I feel a very close connection to that. Matter of fact, just personally right now, one of the things I'm struggling with is, how do I lead my teams? Like I've been out of the office now for over a month. And I feel that like I want to go in and see my team at Talbot. I'm trying to do so next week. My wife and I are having a rather strong debate about the topic. But I feel that it's part of my identity. So where does that fit? And as young adults sort of step into that space where I would say like my grandfather, this was all of his identity. Like he was an iron worker or a stonemason in New York City growing up. That's how he thought of himself. Where I see young adults today, they don't think of themselves in the same way. And then we'll address the hurt issue after that. But what do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I'm really good with fusing these together. Although I mean, both, you're right, both are longer conversations. But I think one of the things really valuable to grasp, almost if you're going to get nothing else, because I think this is one of the most important things to understand about identity. It sounds obvious, perhaps, but it's very complicated, and I think you actually run into difficulty in all kinds of direction when you oversimplify identity. You make your identity, oh, it's just who I am as a worker. It's my role as this, and like those things are real, or it's what happened to the past, or it's where I grew up in, and on you go. And I think you can simplify it in one sense by saying there has to be a master identity in your life, something that's most important in terms of shaping you. And I would contend strongly that needs to be a relationship with Jesus. But I think that I don't have an equation for this, but I think one of the things that you're bumping into that everyone does is how do I keep the other things in balance? Because what happens, to your point, you can get very imbalanced if you look at your past, which is a very important part of your identity. Everyone is we live in a time, your identity is very time bound in the sense of your past shapes it and who you want to be in the future shapes it. And there's that tension. But you live too much in one aspect of your identity, one bucket, one category of your identity, you're going to get bent. You're going to get distorted. You're going to be malformed. And that happens to all of us to some degree or the other. So I think it's about keeping some of these different parts of your identity in tension, allowing that to be part of who you are, but setting Jesus and that relationship with him and following him as the primary lens of your identity, and then bringing the other parts of yourself, like, well, okay, I have this past hurt or this job. How do I do this job to serve Jesus, rather than I'm doing this job and I'm also a Christian on the side?
Yeah, it's good. I like that. We got about a minute left in this segment. Again, we'll continue on the other side. But so you kind of make the case that Jesus stabilizes the tension between your past, kind of who you are past, and who you're becoming future. In about a minute, kind of unpack that for us.
Yeah, so I think that the really valuable thing with your relationship with Jesus is he is the same. And there's parts of your relationship with him, the way that you connect with Jesus. He's your Lord, your Savior, your Creator, your Master, um, your friend. All of that, all of those stay the same. They will never, ever change because Jesus is eternal and he is unchanging. That's incredible stability. I think that's really important in a world where there is very little identity stability. But you're also becoming. Paul talks about, I press on to know him and to grow. And so there's a growth trajectory in your Christian life as well, that you're not just stuck and stagnating.
So good. Okay, good. We're going to continue our conversation with Justin and your calls in just a minute. Again, the title of the book is Who Am I and What Am I Doing with My Life? Finding Stability and Purpose in Jesus. We got several on the line. When we come back, we're going to go next to Marianne in Illinois and others as well. Our number is 877-548-3675. Again, that's 877-548-3675. A timely topic. Finding stability and purpose, particularly for young adults, but good for all of us. Stay with us. We'll hear our conversation with Justin Poythress in just a moment. All right, we're back at Stetzer Live. We've got another segment ahead of us. Lots of good conversation because this is a great topic. And Justin Poythress is our guest. He's a pastor, in this case, an author. He wrote Who Am I and What Am I Doing with My Life? Finding Stability and Purpose in Jesus. And we're talking about this. And, many of the questions thus far are focused on helping others, which I totally get because, maybe you're like me, you've got young adult children, as I have young adult children, or someone had teenagers and others. And so I think that's kind of some of where the theme is. But again, you can call in, talk about working with your kids or your grandkids. You can talk about your own journey about finding stability and purpose. But our number is 877-548-3675. Let's go first to Mary Ann in Illinois. Mary Ann, you're live on the air. Go ahead with your question, your comment.
Yes, I think part of my question was asked or answered by a prior person. But when you just said that, I've had an identity in work. I feel my generation does that. I've been in a job for 25 years, so I don't want that to be my identity, but I also don't know how to explain that to this newer generation because there isn't always the long-term connection in work or employment. So this is so ever-changing, and I also work at a university, so I'm not sure how to steer a younger person when I'm also wondering my identity in this latter part of my life.
Mary Ann, that is like right now such an important question for me too. So I do love that. Thanks for your call. Hold on just a second. We're going to give you a copy of Who Am I and What Am I Doing with My Life? Finding Stability and Purpose in Jesus. Because, and I'll just personalize this. I apologize for doing this, Justin, but I'll personalize this a little bit. Because, when I came out of the hospital, there were several days I couldn't walk at all. Now I have a stroller. It's a walker. My wife says, don't call it a stroller. But I'm taking a stroll. And there were a week where I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to go do my job again. So I'm like, okay, what does that mean for me? Because I've kind of, it is clearly tied to my identity in ways that I think are generally healthy until it pops, comes away. Mary Ann, similarly, she's she's working with the younger generation. She's working in a university. It seems to me that young adults, I just think it's factually true. Young adults do not tie their identity to their job like people my age do. And maybe because you're a millennial, I do wonder, do you look at people my age or older who are more tied their identity to their job? And do you think that's too much, too little? So how would you advise Mary Ann and us in general where our work fits into our identity? Because it has to be part of it. It's part of the creation God declared to be good. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, that's a really big one because I think that you're right in identifying work as a really rightfully large part of your identity should be, and work is a blessing. Right? In the pre-fall, it's there as a really good thing. I think to answer your question briefly, Ed, I think generationally, I just think there's different problems. I think that there's a particular line and strand of work or job continuity or those types of things that older generations get locked in, and then retirement is a little bit more frightening. I doubt that for younger generations, retirement is frightening because they're trying to be quasi-retired now.
Right.
But it's more a matter. It's more a matter of I want to find the exact, perfect, right vocational paid gig that will hit every single, it will just bring out my fullness of my existence, right? It's almost like, I think that we can identify with people idolizing a romantic relationship. People do that with a job because the options are so many. It's like, well, this job doesn't fit every single nook and cranny of my being. If I shifted one or two things, maybe then I could really get every part of me is just fully happy. And it just doesn't exist, right? So it's a different problem. I don't think older generations expect that like every part of them is going to be fulfilled by a job, and so different problems. But I think, okay, well, how do you now balance the place of work within your identity? And I think it's important to recognize you are bigger than your work. And I think that there's skills, there's gifts, there's things that God has given you that He wants to use. But I like the verbiage of stewarding, that you steward your gifts, and I think that allows much more free play and flexibility in what that looks like at different seasons. Your work won't look the same. And it won't look the same now. It won't look the same in retirement. But a lot of the skills, gifts, and experiences, wisdom you accumulate, particularly over age, there's opportunities for that. And maybe it's volunteer work. Maybe it's something within the church. Maybe it's something in your neighborhood. Right? There's ways that you can tap into what God has given you to serve Him. And I think keeping that as your focus. And my understanding is, I think, Ed, you do this fairly well as far as analyzing your gifts and calling and kind of being adaptable to different settings.
Yeah, I think, Marianne, I feel like I hijacked your question a little bit, though. So I'm going to come back to you and make sure that you can ask anything addition that you want as well. Did we cover what you were asking, Marianne? You're live on the air.
Yeah, I think so. But also, how do you help this younger generation in this? Because it's so different. Because they have their identity is not in their work, and to still stewardship them to have a purpose and an identity. I feel like I've already said their identity is not in their work,
right?
But life is work. So how do you help guide them? Because like I said, I work at a university, and a lot of them are saying like, I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know if I should get the degree. I don't know if I should go for just working at, a store or something, or, like, how do you help them to help find their identity? Maybe that's another question.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's a super question, Marianne. Okay, good. So hold on the line. We're going to give you a copy. I mean, this is the theme of his book. So we're going to give you a copy of Who Am I and What Am I Doing with My Life, Finding Stability and Purpose in Jesus. So, I mean, I think that's the question. So this is, to me, Justin, this is sort of a softball for you, because this is literally what you wrote about. So how?
Yeah, and I think what's coming to my mind, there was a few years ago, there was an article from written by a former employee at Google who was basically warning people off from the myth. I think tech has changed a little bit, but it's still there. They really try to facilitate, hey, we've got workout things here, we've got food here, we've got sleeping pods here. They wanted to make you like, we will be everything. We will be all of what you want in a workplace. And they fired the guy or woman, I don't remember. And it's like, whoa, okay, this wasn't this. I shouldn't have tried to make this my identity. And so I think coming to your question, okay, well, what do I do? I think, I'll lean on Kevin DeYoung has a similar book in a number of ways called Just Do Something. That kind of answers it, where you step into something and you do it and realize this won't be forever, but you're going to learn things. You're probably going to find out more of who you are. But I think we just get so locked in this paralysis of what if I do it wrong? And that's just not how God works. That's not how He works in your past. That's not how He works now. God's going to use your circumstances around you to hone and shape you. And your goal, my goal, depending if the person's Christian or not, you can tell them this, is I want to be shaped more into the image of Jesus. I want to glorify Him, and the circumstances shape around that. And the doors will open, and God will bring that, about in the right time. But you just step into things and try to serve the Lord and other people.
Super, Marion. Thanks so much. Great double comment, double question. Thanks for letting me hijack it a little bit and then come back to it as well. Let me tell you our number because we've got just a little more time with Justin, and it's 877-548-3675. 877-548-3675. And Justin, I will tell you, I think one of the things I really appreciated about the book was the emphasis on church community and how that sort of ties in. I'm at this church, Mariners Church, and we were really blessed to see. We started the young adult service on a Thursday night, which just tripled our expectations, the number of young adults who would come, and really has become a key shaping point. So when I preached that service, when we preach the weekend, you start Thursday night. I just see that community shaping kind of self-discovery and growth. So tell us how, though, because I know you write on this. This is an important part of where you are on this, and I love that because I think sometimes that just gets lost in the find yourself conversation.
Yeah, boy, I can't emphasize how much, right? It's just the simple things that the Bible leans on, like church, be part of God's people, and He knows what we need. I think one of the things that I would begin with is understanding this idea of reaching and actualizing your identity. It doesn't happen outside of community. I just want to keep blowing up that myth that I get stuck in people's head that you can't, if you follow what somebody else thinks you should do, or you listen too closely to somebody else, or you're not being true to yourself anymore. That's a joke. It's just, everybody is listening to other people, whether that's an influencer, whether that's somebody on TV, whether it's your friends, whether it's just kind of advertisements and culture. Like, we are shaped inevitably by community. You can't get around that. And so the question to then be conscious of is, well, what community? And so I think the beauty of what the church is that you have something that has the potential for three-dimensional community, in the sense that, that it seriously and significantly bests online virtual community, and that people see you. They see more of who you are. It's meant to be a family unit where you have people around you saying, hey, this was really helpful. This was really useful. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for serving in that way. Or, yeah, that's, that was kind of a struggle, or that wasn't, I think that's something that doesn't come naturally to you or something. And you have other people to sound that out. You have other people to look at you and be like, boy, you really kind of flew off the handle there. What happened? And so God has given us the church to help us grow it, because people outside you, we all know this, people outside you see things in you that you don't see yourself. But if you're not open to that, you're not going to grow. And the beauty of a church community is that everybody there from the get-go, is held together by the same ultimate higher values. We want to grow closer to God. And so the community has much better possibility for and potential for growth versus we just want to be a community to be a community. That becomes very cliquish and negative.
So good. Okay, we're going to continue our conversation with Justin Poythress in just a minute, and your calls, 877. This is our final segment, so this is the time to get on the line. 877-548-3675. Let me say it again, 877-548-3675. Hey, let me thank my team doing a great job there in Chicago. My producer, Karen Hendren, engineer, Merle St. James, my associate producer, Lisa Jempty, Simon on the phones. Give Simon that call, 877-548-3675. We are back. I love this music. Merle, can I just say I love our bumper music. I missed it for a while. It's been gone for a while, so I missed it. Glad to be back in the proverbial saddle here. 877-548-3675 is our number, and you got to call right now if you're going to get on a question in. 877-548-3675. Let's go to, I hope I'm saying it right, it's Ariane in Inland Empire here in California. You're live on the air. Go right ahead, Ariane.
Hi, thank you so much for coming back and sharing your experience, because I feel like I'm going through the same thing, just longer. In my situation, I broke my foot in like 5 pieces by my pinky. So my identity was in church. I'm serving the Lord, doing worship for years. My kids started to become young adults. I'm Gen X. young adult, so I kind of put that off to the side, and I thought, okay, I'll go to work finally after 35 years being at home, go to work, help supplement, help to understand them. From there, I got sick, so no more work. So then when I got sick, I said, okay, let me just go back to serving the Lord at worship again. But then that's when I broke my foot. So it's been a year. A broken foot is about a year or more, depending on the situation, because it didn't heal right. So now I find myself on radio stations, like I'm listening to things. Like I'm so glad you're sharing your because I find myself in the exact same place. You're at home, you can't walk, you can't move, and it's just what do I do now? I'm Gen X. My kids are.
We're not supposed to have this situation at our age. We're like, what are we? I mean, you sort of think maybe we're 80, but here we are. You know, I'm in my late 50s. I'm in my latest 50s, and I'm on a walker. It's crazy. So I get it. So good. Well, so with that situation. So then, what's your question for Justin?
So the question was this: is that I find myself not knowing what to do. Like, where's my identity now? Because it's been serving the Lord for so many years, like 35 years. And now I find myself kind of wondering, what do I do now? Like, what do you do now?
Yeah, no, I think it's just great.
Trust in the Lord, read the word.
Well, we're gonna press Justin to go beyond just the simple answers.
Yes.
Justin, this is Ariane, and I have this same. Thank you for your call, Ariane. If you hold on we'll give you a copy of Who Am I and What Am I Doing with My Life? Finding Stability and Purpose in Jesus. So, when you get knocked down, you're trying to get back up again. How do you find stability and purpose in Jesus? Ariane and someone else, maybe the radio host, wants to know.
Yeah, boy, this is. I think a lot of it is understanding the story that you are in. Right? And we're always just kind of telling stories about our life and making sense of it. That's how you make sense of your life. And I stole, I think, a healthy chunk of this, but it's biblical, so I think it's safe ground. But I think it's Paul Miller has a book called The J Curve, but he explains this much better than I will. But our story as Christians is death to resurrection. And I think that's really valuable, and understanding that your story is not this world's pattern of like, oh, you just go up, 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 and up. And there's no space in that for what happens after bodies break down and you get fired unexpectedly. And, and I think understanding that the Christian story, Jesus calls us to be dying to ourselves. And he's going to bring us through that. There's no other way. You're going to die to yourself and things that you thought were important or valuable. So your health, your ability to move, or your ability to work, or this particular job, or your ability to hike without a walker. You're going to go through this suffering and this death. And it's understanding, okay, there's a closeness to Jesus in this. There's a loss of something, so that, though, this is the good news of Christianity, that there's a resurrection on the other side. Now, that's a little bit trickier because the Bible doesn't give you your specific answer to what is that resurrection, besides, of course, resurrection life after this. But it's a closer unity to Jesus. It's more of a valuing of who is he in my life, and how do I love him? And just this is going to sound like an oversimplification, but how do I love and focus my attention more on Jesus and the people around me? Right? Just to love others. Who are the people that are around you right now? Your family, your neighbors, your immediate church setting. Okay, how do I really care for these people right now? I think this is a really important part of identity that is such a big trap. Your fulfilled identity isn't around the corner when X, Y, and Z happen, when Ed recovers and is able to dance again. That's not when he's himself, right? It's right now. It's right now.
That's good.
And I think that's really hard for all of us to remember.
Yeah, in the book, one of the key themes I really liked is that you kind of argue that, you argue that purpose flows from identity rather than the other way around. So that does shift the way we should think about things like calling, vocation, career, and et cetera, et cetera. So unpack that a little bit more for us. We got about 2 minutes left in the program.
Yeah. So understanding that, your identity, right? And I think this is the part of my frustration, honestly, was okay, as a Christian, my identity is in Christ. Okay, well, what in the world does that mean? Okay. And so it's understanding, well, what that means is my focus should be, and I don't want to idealize this like we all, or I can do this, or that any of us can do this perfectly. My identity should be, how do I serve the Lord? How do I enjoy him? How do I glorify him with my gifts? And then the purpose starts hitting you, right? Okay, I've got these needs right around me. I've just got to get through today. I've got to take care of my spouse, or my kids are wanting this help. And it's just like, okay, here is the purpose or there's just got my work, my daily work to do here. Whatever that is. And so I'm going to serve the Lord. I'm going to love the people that I encounter, and try to be a light for Jesus in these settings. And that doesn't mean you lose sight of larger questions of, do I need to switch here? Do I need to move here? Do I need to take this opportunity? But it's don't lose sight of what's in front of you for the larger questions, because what's in front of you should be my relationship with Jesus and the fruits of the Spirit.
Super. And Justin, just say super helpful book. Like I said, I'm going to give it, I got one particular daughter in mind I'm going to get a copy to, which I don't think I've actually said to a guest thus far. So I appreciate the book, and I appreciate our calls today, and I appreciate Justin coming on as well. The book is Who Am I and What Am I Doing with My Life? Finding Stability and Purpose in Jesus. Justin Poythress is the author. If you go to edstetzerlive.com, there's just a link right there to the book. As well. And again, to hear today's program again, you'll find it at edstetzerlive.com or on the Moody Radio app. Actually, all of our programs are there as well. Connect with us through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Ed Stetzer Live. And Ed Stetzer Live is a production of Moody Radio. And Moody Radio is a ministry of Moody Bible Institute. Hey, thanks for listening. Look forward to being back next week to continue our conversations.